right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our St. Paul City Council Candidate Forum for Ward 6. We'll start this forum, or actually before the forum starts, Mai from Fair Vote, Minnesota is going to speak for a couple of minutes on ranked choice voting.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Mai Chang, and I'm a community organizer with Fair Vote Minnesota. Fair Vote Minnesota is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, and we advocate and do education on ranked choice voting. So raise your hand if you are familiar with ranked choice voting. Awesome, that means I don't have to do an education up here, right? Okay, so this year's election, we have both the school board and city council races. You won't be able to rank school board candidates, but you will be able to rank candidates running for city council in your ward. So many of you probably have one favorite candidate who you want to vote for already. I still encourage you to listen to today's forum and see how you want to rank these candidates as your first, second, and third choice. Your second and third choice never harms your first, and ranking the same candidate multiple times will not help your first choice. So how do votes get counted? Candidates win the election by getting a majority of first choice votes, which is 50% plus an additional vote. If your first choice has the fewest votes, your first choice candidate will be eliminated and your vote will transfer or be reallocated to your second choice. The counting and reallocation continues in rounds until one candidate receives a majority of votes. If only two candidates remain and neither has received a majority of votes, then the candidate with the most votes is the winner. So again, if you are voting by mail, voting early, or on election day, which is on November 5th, remember to rank your ballot as it will maximize your voice and your power. If you have any more questions about how ranked choice voting works, you can come talk to me. We also have brochures and flyers at the back table. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mai. My name's Mary Rice, and I'm a league-trained moderator and member. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of St. Paul Neighborhood Network, District 2 Community Council, and Payne-Fallon District 5 Planning Council. We believe the success of St. Paul depends on the values, knowledge, and commitment of our elected officials. Thus, it's essential for the public to better understand the views, opinions, and commitments of people running for elected office in St. Paul. It is this understanding that better equips voters with information to make informed voting decisions. We appreciate candidates and audience members taking the time to be here tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that you all have cards on your chairs, and those are there for writing questions to the candidates. Once you have a question, please hold it up, wave it, and a volunteer will come and pick it up from you. If you'd like to register to vote after the forum, stop by the League's table and they will help you do that. Tonight's forum is for the candidates running for Ward 6, Alex Bourne, Kasim Boussouri, Greg Copeland, Danielle Swift, Terry Tao, and Nelsie Yang. The candidates participating in tonight's forum have all agreed to the forum rules, which were included in their invitation to participate. So each candidate will give a 2-minute introductory statement. The candidates will then have 1 minute to answer questions. They will also have 30 seconds for rebuttal, but that's only if necessary and only if that candidate gets called out by name. A timer will signal when they have 15 seconds remaining. 30? Okay, when there are 30 seconds remaining, is there a 15-second? Okay, when they have 30 seconds remaining and when their time is up. We'll accept written questions throughout the forum. Questions submitted by the audience must not be personal in nature and must be on topics relevant for the position. All questions must be addressed to all candidates. Once you have a question written, please pass it or hold it up and an usher will collect it. Questions that are of a personal nature, embarrassing, hostile, or unclear in intent will not be asked. Similar questions may be consolidated and questions may be edited for clarity or brevity. Campaign literature, buttons, signs, clothing, or any other campaign-related items are not allowed in the room. But information on candidates is available on the tables outside the forum. Please remain as quiet as possible so that everyone may hear. Please hold your applause or any other noise whatsoever until the forum has ended so that the candidates will have as much time as possible to answer your questions and for purposes of good videotaping. Please also now place your cell phones on silent if they aren't already. Members of the media may be recording this forum for their own use, and the forum is being video recorded by the St. Paul Neighborhood Network for viewing by the public. With that, we'll start with opening statements. Candidates, you each have 2 minutes for an opening statement. We will begin with Alexander Bourne.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for organizing this. I put together a little prepared statement for you all. In efforts of giving voters a better insight into who I am and what I have been doing the last 10 years. I put together a little something for you all based on 2 questions that I was recently asked. What qualifies me to lead a co-governing effort in the city of St. Paul, on the city council, and what have I done for the East Side, the city of St. Paul, as well as the state of Minnesota? My response is as follows. I am a socially minded and civically engaged individual. I'm a community member that loves St. Paul. I was raised and educated in St. Paul, K through 11. I want to be the person that brings people together to not only build organic community, but to help create policies that reflect who we are as a community and abolish those that do not. I truly believe that if I can get common folk engaged in the political process, then we will have common sense policies and less government in our everyday lives. I stem from a family that believes education, hard work, and a vocation go hand in hand. I have dedicated my life to community advocacy and campaign development for political candidates seeking to be socially, economically, and culturally inclusive. Though socially innovative, I have cultivated spaces for learning and the advancement of campaigns through collaborations, risk mitigation, and resource mobilization. I have an educational background in English literature, chemistry, and biology from Xavier University of Louisiana, and I look forward to answering any questions that you all may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Kasim Busuri.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this forum together and for the community members who came tonight, this evening, to listen to us. I'm here to listen to everyone and hear your questions about what I can do to make the East Side a better place for all of us. I come from Somalia. My family left Somalia after the Civil War and went to Kenya and lived in a refugee camp. My mother, who is someone that I look up to and who is a role model for me, was the first woman to be given a job in the food distribution through the Red Cross. She was a change engine for that refugee camp there. So she was put in a position where it was a male-dominated position, and she was able to do her job well. And I follow her footsteps today, and she's still alive. My father is still alive. My family of 10 brothers and 4 sisters are still here with us in Minnesota. And myself, I have 3 children now. I just had a baby daughter on Thursday. And I moved to the East Side 3 years ago because I wanted to do something good for the East Side. I worked while I was going to college at the U of M as medical transport, and I would take chemically dependent clients from the East Side to the West Metro to get treatment. And I said to myself when I was driving through the East Side of St. Paul, why has St. Paul forgotten about the East Side? And I said to myself that first time I came through the East Side, that one day I'll move back here, I'll buy a house, and I'll do something about fixing and helping the East Side become a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Copeland.
Good evening, folks, and thank you for coming this evening and sharing your time with the community. I think, St. Paul as a city and Ward 6 in particular are really in difficult straits. We have a situation now where the east side has become sort of a poverty collection center. Our area has not gotten the benefit of the public funds that are out there that we need to solve the problems of housing, and roads and schools and all the other health-related things that we need. And frankly, it's very disappointing to hear our mayor talk about reducing the size of the police department given the crime situation. I live right off of Payne Avenue in Grid 54, one of the most active crime areas in St. Paul. And, whenever I go to the crime meetings down at the E-Team, everybody knows about Grid 54, sitting right there, south of the dollar store. I live right there. And we don't have an option but to take on those problems with regard to crime. The other thing we don't have an option about is dealing with the poverty in this community. I've been to these forums with my friends here, and we have lots of stories about, we're going to do this about climate change, or we're going to do this about this and that. Folks, we got to deal with what we've got. We've got 50% of the people who rent are not able to really afford the places they're in. They're paying over 30% of their rental. They're burdened. The homeowners in our city as a whole, 36% are in that same position. We've got a crisis. And if we go spending all the funds of the city on the things that don't matter, we're not going to get there. I want to double the spending in our CIB funds on our road repair. We've got $36 million that we can put to work right now on that job.
Thank you. Danielle Swift.
Good evening. How y'all doing? My name is Danielle Swift, and I'm running for City Council, Ward 6. I'm an organizer, so I work at the Frogtown Neighborhood Association, and I'm very much so boots on the ground. I'm running for City Council because I feel like we need to change our approach on how we're dealing with issues. It's good to hear poverty coming up as an issue, but it's disheartening not to hear how it correlates to the violence and how poverty is the root issue of violence. And so I'm here to be that reminder. I'm here to come with empathy and compassion, thinking about our community members and their quality of life. Even the people who are involved in some of these things, they are our neighbors, they are our community. And when we all do better, we all do better. I know that the DFL loves Paul Wellstone, and I really do believe that. So I'm here to bring an organizing spirit to the City Council. I'm here to go and reach those people who are not actively engaged. I'm here to change the process of engagement and really change the way that we are doing things instead of always expecting people to come to us, to change the method and go to the people. So I'm very excited to be here. I appreciate your time. I know it's valuable, and I look forward to the rest of this evening. Thanks.
Terry Tao.
All right. Thank you again for having us here tonight. My name is Terry Tao. I'm a mother of two. I'm a wife, a daughter of Hmong refugees, and an oldest child. I grew up in St. Paul in the Frogtown neighborhood, and I've lived on the east side for 12 years with my family. I know what it's like to grow up in a neighborhood where you feel like no one pays attention to you because you're poor, and also where you can't go outside because of the crime that's happening there. But however, I was taught at a young age that I personally have to be involved in making this change happen. And so for the past 15 years, I've worked on issues of community economic development, worked on the foreclosure crisis that hit the east side here extremely hard, helping Hmong families call their banks so that they could renegotiate their loan payments. I've sat on the board of the East Side Neighborhood Development Company, where we worked for many years to make Payne and Arcade the avenues they are today, the business districts. And I know that's still a work in progress. I've also sat on a number of different boards and commissions, most particularly the Planning Commission at the City of St. Paul for the past 9 years, where I worked on increasing bike paths and trails here on the east side, and particularly sidewalks, because a lot of folks are pedestrians and we're also isolated from a lot of transit. I also grew up in a small business family, so I care a lot about how we increase the tax base here in St. Paul, and especially here on the east side. And despite the things that are happening here, despite the crime, people still see the neighborhood as full of opportunity. And that's a big reason why I'm running, because I want to build on these opportunities. It's not just in the places, but in the people who live here. We have a lot of young people here in the neighborhood. They are the next workforce that we will need here in the city of St. Paul. So I believe we need to invest in the people here and in place to make my family and make many generations here better off in the years to come. Thank you.
Nelsie Yang.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Nelsie Yang, and I just really want to take some time to really thank all the leaders and community neighbors who are here, because this is what it actually looks like for us to really rebuild our community. And I want to share that for me, like I'm running for a city council really to bring progressive leadership to our entire community here and at City Hall. When I look at the community here in the East Side, it really reminds me a lot about what it looked like growing up, as somebody who lived in poverty. And for me, like I am a Hmong daughter of refugees. I'm somebody who is a renter here in the East Side. I am a union steward and organizer over at Take Action Minnesota. And one of the reasons why I started doing political work, especially at a very, very young age many years ago, is because I am somebody who is determined to really bring our communities together across race, class, gender, and age. And when I think about that mission, that purpose, that's something that, the East Side really reflects. Like our community here is so diverse, so beautiful. And what hurts the most is actually just really realizing that we live in systems that have always been built to leave out people of color, been built to leave out renters, built to leave out, even like our public schools, and immigrants, refugees. And to me, this is actually the strength of the East Side. And our families here are so hardworking. What we really need in City Council is somebody who is here, willing to organize, willing to fight for a fair share. And when we actually get that, when we achieve that type of engagement as well in our community locally, I really believe that that's how we can make sure we can push for renter rights together. That's how we can make sure that we get our community prepped and ready to face all the climate injustices and crises that are going to come up ahead. And also be on the pathway to fully funding our schools and make sure that everyone has a roof over their head and that our seniors' families are not being priced out of the East Side here. And that we also have an advocate fighting for our small businesses. And so, I'm thankful for everyone here in the room. I see so many people who were here supporting me at the DFL convention in May. And at that time, we led in first place in all the ballots. And I'm so excited to share more about the campaign in a bit here.
All right, thank you. Now we're ready to start the question and answer portion of our forum. The candidates will be asked questions and asked to answer in varying order. So with the first question, we will start, the first candidate to be asked will be Danielle Swift, then Nelsie Yang, then Terry Tao, and then the other three will follow. And the question is, do you have any plan to improve the lives or enhance the safety of seniors in the community? And if so, what is that plan?
Absolutely. I think I spend a lot of my time focusing on housing. It's an area that I work in day to day. And I do think of issues in a matter of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where if we are addressing basic needs, that we will see an improvement from there. And I know that seniors are one of the fastest displaced communities when it comes to raising rents and raising property taxes. So just with fair housing, when we say for all, and we're talking diversity, it's not just race, but it's age as well. And so working to keep rents affordable, especially if someone's living on a fixed income, which I know is the case for a lot of our seniors in Ward 6.
Nelsie Yang?
Can you repeat the question again?
Have any plan to improve the lives or enhance the safety of seniors in the community, and if so, what is it?
Yes, this is something that's so important to me, as a young person, as someone who grew up as a daughter of refugees. Something that I've had to do since my upbringing was really bridging the gap between young people and elders. When I was a little girl, 5, 6 years old, I was already helping translate for my elders in my community, the Hmong community, and even outside of that as well. And to me, making sure that our seniors, our elders, are able to live a good life and a life that is dignified, that they're proud of, is so deeply important to me, because it's also something that I want for everybody as well. And I want to be here, working together with our seniors, actually convening tables with them and asking them, what is it that you would like to see in the east side here? What is it in our system, in our city that's like not working for you? I know that making sure that they are able to live in their home and afford it is important. I want our city to actually be held accountable to making sure that we are an ADA accessible community as well. And one of the reasons why, I continue to go and visit our senior homes every single year is really to engage them, make sure that they are at the center of our democracy.
Terry Tao.
Yes, I think, so the three things that I'm working on directly address and impact seniors, because I believe when we solve for the most vulnerable in our community, we're able to solve it for everybody else. So my core things that I'm working around economic development, so how we increase opportunity and growth here, which helps redistribute the tax base, so then the burden isn't on a lot of senior households who tell me often when I'm at doors that they see their tax bill increasing year after year. Another piece I'm very passionate about too is the issue of housing. I care, another key piece is maintaining and preserving housing. So how do we help seniors access programs that help them fix up their homes, weatherize their homes, keep home costs down so it remains affordable? And last but not least, I care a lot about creating safe, great neighborhoods for folks to cross the street. In addition to that, I care a lot about public safety. So how do we make sure that when seniors call, that they're being responded to, when particularly in hot spots of the neighborhood, and in areas where they feel like they can't address some of the problems because they are seniors or they are in wheelchairs. So how do we work in partnership with the police to make that happen?
The order of the next three are Kasim Busuri, Greg Copeland, and Alexander Bourne. Kasim Busuri.
Thank you. They are many things that I've already been working on and will continue to work on. My legislative aid, the number one calls we get at our office is from senior citizens to our office with concerns and issues that they get within the neighborhood. So Scott has been great at of working with our senior community and making sure that the issues that they bring up is taken care of right away that same day. Other things that I've been working on is making sure that they have accessibility to affordable groceries and food that's nearby, so they don't have to drive out or go far, and they can walk to those grocery stores. So with the development of the Hillcrest Golf Course as well, I would love to see more senior housing and developments in that location where they could easily access shopping, the parks, and everything they need in order to have a happy life.
Greg Copeland.
Greg Copeland.
Yeah, the first thing I think we need to do is recognize that many seniors, and I speak as the only senior citizen running for this office. I had my 65th. That's quite an accomplishment, now. You know. Anyway, one thing I can tell you is that we need to do something about our taxes. You can't have this sort of never land idea that you can afford to see a $392 tax bill increase on the median value home in District 5. You can't have that and say that you're for seniors. Seniors are getting a 1.6% increase in Social Security. Do you realize that compared to a 22.3 or 1 or whatever percent you want to put on it with the city tax bill is crazy? And don't forget, we got the county after us, and we got the school board after us too. So if you want to do something for seniors, you keep the spending down. You make the government work harder instead of adding 54 people as they've done in the last 2 years.
Alexander Bourne.
You'd think after all these all these responses that we'd got an answer to the question. I think the question was surrounding, do we have a plan to make senior citizens feel safe? The answer for me is no, I don't have a plan, but I can definitively say that I have been in communication with many of the seniors that are actually in here tonight to discuss how we can move towards a measurable solution. Public safety is a huge concern for not only myself, but all of I believe most people here in the city of St. Paul. The fact of the matter is we really want to make sure that our seniors are able to age in place. I do agree wholeheartedly with much of what has already been said. A couple things that I actually personally do on my free time for the senior citizens here in the community. I have a group of youth that I work with that go around and provide lawn service to our senior citizens in the summer and fall months, but also in the winter months we make sure that we are helping them out with their shoveling and things along those lines. So thank you.
All right, thank you. The next question will go first to Kasim Busuri, then Alexander Bourne, and then Danielle Swift. And it is, what are your plans to reduce crime on the east side? Kasim Busuri?
Thank you. So I've worked as a youth violence prevention consultant for the city of Minneapolis and worked with them closely on the group violence intervention strategies, which they put in place 3 years ago. And today, the city council got a presentation about group violence intervention, excuse me, group violence intervention strategies at the city hall by a consultant from Minneapolis about how to reduce crime. I'm glad to see that our mayor and other city council members are taking actions today to look at this issue. The city of St. Paul does not have a plan or a strategy to reduce crime. And the best way to do it is by introducing group violence intervention strategies, which is coined by John Jay College in New York. And it would work for our city. It would reduce the crime. It would take a whole community to stop the crime in St. Paul. And we started the conversation with the NAACP meeting a few weeks ago about how we can come together as a community to reduce the crime together. Thank you.
Alexander Bourne.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, what are your plans to reduce crime on the east side?
Sure. About a month ago, I partnered with the Sheriff's Department, local nonprofit organizations, small businesses here in the community, as well as community members, to have a rally against gun violence, asking for gangbangers to put their guns down. It was a beautiful thing. Kasim Busuri here actually was one of those elected officials, that actually participated in that. From that came what we are now working on, and I think will get us some real results. It's surrounding expungements, employment. What we are looking to do, and I'm going to run about 5 seconds over, so bear with me. I'm sorry, Ms. Joanne, but I really want you all to know this. What we're working on right now is expungements in partnership with the county attorney's office, the state through the governor's office. What we want to do is provide expungements for not only those that have been convicted of any sort of crime, but also those that have simply been arrested for a crime. A lot of individuals get arrested but never charged, and so what we want to do is get those expungements taken care of because those individuals face a lot of the same hardships as those that have actually been convicted of a crime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle Swift?
I think that I volunteer with a group called Root and Restore, and we explore community alternative approaches to community violence. In May, I did an event at Cinco de Mayo. I had a booth there, and we brought barbers in to cut hair, to build connections with these young men because we know that they're there and we know that they're participating in violence. So extending effort to build relationships with these young men. Like I stated earlier, they are people and they are members of our community. I think putting more resources towards mentorship and also resources towards basic needs again, like housing and job stability and education, rec centers and programming to keep youth busy so that we can take a more proactive approach rather than be reactionary with just throwing police at an issue. Like when I stated earlier, violence, the root cause to violence is poverty.
Okay, the next three are Terry Tao, Nelsie Yang, and Greg Copeland.
All right, thank you. I think for me, plans to reduce crime on the east side, there's both a short-term and a long-term strategy. The short-term are things like gun buyback programs because people are really alarmed about the number of guns that are currently on the street. There's also little things that we can actually do. A number of neighbors I talk to talk about increasing lights in alleyways and on streets so that people feel a greater sense of safety in their neighborhood. That becomes a short-term and less expensive way to address crime or potential crime. In the the long term, I do agree with Danielle about long-term investments in our young people. We need to engage them around things that they're interested in, such as arts and entrepreneurship. We've got a couple projects happening here on the east side, particularly at the old Swedish Bank building, that will be about bringing some youth together on arts, on arts-related projects. And I think that's going to be really key. You know, an economic development strategy, giving folks a job and giving folks an alternative makes people believe that there's other things to do besides be engaged in a life of crime.
Nelsie Yang.
Thank you so much for this question. This is a question very near and dear to my heart because I also have family members who have been incarcerated before. You know, I work at Take Action Minnesota as a criminal justice reform organizer, and that really means working to dismantle the systems in our community that actually do not work for us. And we know that the criminal justice system is actually really deeply rooted in racism and sexism and corporate greed. And that's why when we look at communities most hit by it, you know, the East Side is something, you know, it feels so urgent to me because we are the target that's most hit. And I just want to name that. You know, when it comes to this, like as a council member, you can definitely count on me to make sure that our public dollars are really being invested in our families, children, and especially our public schools. I will fight to make sure that, you know, in the east side here, I actually want to see all-day recreation centers and parks, green spaces, you know, being preserved and built here, and also all-day libraries as well. And in addition to that, it's actually really important for people to be able to have a roof over their head, make a livable wage, so that they don't go out into the streets doing things that are harmful for them. And these are things I'm going to be pushing for as a council member.
Greg Copeland.
Yes, you know, it's pretty distressing to hear the city councilman tell us that the city doesn't have a plan on public safety. That's concerning. And I do have my light that I'm paying for and have been paying for on my alley for a long time. I was the local guy on the block. My telephone number and my email and everything were out to everybody in the neighborhood, and they used to call me 911 because that's my birthday. When I had drug dealers ask me why I was always calling the police, I told them it was my favorite number. I think what we had, and I'm going back to the days when Norm Coleman was the mayor, and we had block clubs, and we engaged our neighbors, and we made this a cultural thing, and we had a school system that employed school resource officers and wasn't afraid to. You have to have a culture that starts at the schoolhouse door, that supports law and order, that supports respect for human rights. This is not something that just gets acquired out of the thin air.
All right, the next question, and I would like to ask each candidate to make sure that you stop at the 1 minute mark. It makes this whole process a lot easier. So,
There was never a plan.
30 seconds. You have
Okay.
30 seconds.
There was never a plan ever since I've been appointed to the city council. I've been making an approach to the mayor. I made those approaches to the mayor to introduce GVI, Group Violence Intervention. I made approaches to the council president, and I didn't get any response. I've made those comments and worked with them and tried to continue to work with them to bring a plan, and we still don't have a plan. It is not because I'm sitting there and doing nothing. I've been trying to get these plans put into places, and today they just talked about it. Thank you.
All right, the next question will go first to Greg Copeland, then to Terry Tao, then to Kasim Basuri. And it is, would you commit to opposing any attempt to repeal ranked choice voting in St. Paul, and what's the basis for your answer?
No, actually, I would not oppose a repeal of ranked choice voting. I voted against that. I advocated against that. There were a number of people in the DFL at the time, many of them living here in Ward 6. Chuck Repke, in fact, was a leader of those not wanting to see a ranked choice voting. In fact, it's never served its purpose in St. Paul. We've never had to go to the multiple balloting to come up with our ballot decisions. I think we can make our choices known, you know, the old-fashioned way. He or she who gets the most votes gets lucky and gets to go to the council meetings or the commission meetings or whatever, or the school board meetings. The school board's been elected this way and still is. So I don't know, are we doing something wrong there? I mean, aside from the fact that the teachers union buys the school board seats, I would say it's an okay election, right? You know.
Terry Tao.
Well, I think the fact that there's 6 candidates up here running for Ward 6 means there's something about ranked choice voting that actually works. It means people who normally wouldn't be part of the process can throw their names in the ring and also participate and share their message with folks. Because we all, unfortunately, the thing right now is it could be a 2-person race. And I think what I hear from folks is even with the 6 of us running, that they still feel like there's not a lot of choice. And so, I'm glad you're here tonight to hear from the 6 of us. So I would commit, the language is kind of funky, but I would be okay if folks oppose anyone who's trying to oppose ranked choice voting, because I think this is exactly what it's doing here, is that it's allowing folks to participate in our democracy in ways that they normally wouldn't have. Thank you.
Kasim Basuri.
Repeat the question again, please.
Would you commit to opposing any attempt to repeal ranked choice voting in St. Paul? And what's the basis for your answer?
No, I would not bring a proposal to repeal it or support it to repeal or support anybody that would be repealing the ranked choice voting. It gives many opportunities, as Terry said, to other candidates to be able to run, and to have more people that are able to run gives more voices to the people. So at the end of the day, we'll get to choose, the people get to choose who they want, and they can rank based on their choices. And it gives you the option of saying, instead of just saying, if I can vote for the person that I want, I'm not going to vote. It gives people option to vote. So getting more people on the ballot helps people get out to vote. And we'll see that this year, that we should see higher numbers in voting this year. Thank you.
Okay, next are Nelsie Yang, Alexander Bourne, and Danielle Swift. Nelsie Yang.
Hey everybody, yes, I fully support ranked choice voting. As an organizer, I've actually been at the Capitol very active and vocal about supporting fair ranked choice voting and making sure that we don't preempt this. There are, many of our representatives or elected officials in office who work very hard to strip away a lot of the things that actually build our democracy and give people choice. And so I support ranked choice voting and will do everything I can to oppose anybody or elected officials who are working to dismantle this. And I want to share that it's because if actually, I want to name that in what we see in politics is that typically it's like people in the status quo, people, who are a part of like the system who, they're typically the ones who get elected. It's like, maybe much more convenient for them too. I've seen many races where people of color, people from very disenfranchised communities get elected, and they are the best voice representing very diverse communities. And I have worked on those campaigns myself, especially in Minneapolis and in St. Paul here too. And so I want to continue protecting that and making sure we have that.
Alexander Bourne.
I support ranked choice voting in its entirety. I think it's great for democracy. I think it's nice to have a choice. But I also agree with the words that have been spoken before me. I personally try to promote ranked choice voting at every chance I get. That being said, if you have a candidate of choice in mind that is already your first choice other than myself, I ask that you take the necessary steps to engage with me, allow me to engage with you, so that I can earn your second, if not your third choice vote on November the 5th. Thank you.
Danielle Swift.
I'm for ranked choice voting. I think that it promotes democracy. I think we want to encourage people to participate. I really want to recognize that what we have in front of you, this panel of people, has never happened in Ward 6 before. It has never happened before. And this panel of people in front of you is a true representation of what Ward 6 really is. This is a beautiful site, and it's really an honor to be in this race. So I'm for ranked choice voting. I'm all for whatever it takes to get people to participate in the process because it's lacking. I think that as we continue on with this, just like you see more candidates than you've ever seen, we'll start to see more voters than we've ever seen. Ward 6 has some of the lowest voter turnout in the entire state of Minnesota. And so I think that that's something where if we have more options and more choices, that we will see more participation.
Okay, the next question will go first to Danielle Swift, then Greg Copeland, then Nelsie Yang. And the question is, where do you stand on the $400 million Rush Line dedicated busway project? Do you think bus rapid transit on 35E is an option?
Yes, I think that a rapid bus transit on 35E is an option. I think that it's always an option. Anything can always be an option. Where there is a will, there is a way. I have to be honest, I don't know specifics about the $400 million deal, but I do know that transportation is extremely important, especially as people get pushed out of the inner city and into surrounding suburbs. People need to be able to get back into the city and come to go to work. A lot of times it's to come back to go to church and that sort of thing, because we want to keep our communities intact. So there are a lot of different people who are in various surrounding areas. And I think that the transportation will help people who are in the city get out to jobs as well. So I think it creates opportunities both ways to provide that level of transportation.
Greg Copeland?
Thank you. This plan is an absolute disaster. If you enjoy the Bruce Vento Trail, if you value the environment that's created by the enrichment that's occurred over the last 25 years, then you are not going to be in favor of tearing out all of those trees that we are so fortunate to have on the right-of-way that is now the Bruce Vento Trail. We have spent a ton of money, we, the state of Minnesota, out on 35, the Min Pass lanes, from downtown St. Paul right up to White Bear, where this crazy bus line wants to go. We've got a whole separate dedicated bus lane, north and south, brand new concrete. It gets you back and forth in about 12 minutes, either way. So, we don't need it. And frankly, what we need is a bus that goes from Payne Avenue to Rice Street on Maryland. We don't need to spend $400 million, county commissioners, on, I'm getting a stop sign. And that's the problem. We're spending the money in the wrong places.
Nelsie Yang?
I support it. I'm very excited about it. There's been many times where I've actually dreamt of the East Side here being a very public, transit-friendly place for all of our working families, for us to actually be relying on green, new and renewable energy here in our community. And one of the reasons why is because I actually think about all of the moments when I've talked to families who tell me, oh, Nelsie, it takes me like a 20-minute, 30-minute walk just to get to where I need to be every single day. And I want the East Side here to be accessible for every single person. And I want to acknowledge that, like, one of the reasons why we are at the side of the city, like, not getting this type of investment is that we've just been so marginalized. And we need a council member who's here actually pushing and engaging with people to make sure that we create this type of community. I really look forward to convening tables with neighbors here, making sure that your needs are actually met. And when it comes to being able to travel to other places in the East Side here or across St. Paul or to work, that it's a very easy and convenient commute for you.
All right, the next three to answer will be Alexander Bourne, Kasim Busuri, and Terry Tao. Alexander Bourne?
I do not support the rush line. I think it's bad for many of the reasons that Mr. Copeland outlined. I do believe that we should be investing in a transportation system not only from Payne Avenue to Rice Street, but from White Bear Avenue all the way to Como Avenue. I think the rush line, it puts our prized waterways and our prized natural resources at jeopardy. And as an environmentalist at heart, I don't support that at all.
Kasim Busuri?
I don't support the rush line going through the 35E, and because it takes away the opportunity for people in Weiber Avenue to see the East Side, to shop at the East Side. And I do support not putting the rush line through Bruce Vento. I don't want it to go through Bruce Vento. We can put it through McKnight Avenue where the Hillcrest Golf Course is being built, and it could go through that area. It could go through Weiber Avenue. There's many ways to reroute this, but we do need this rush line to go through the East Side so that people from Weiber Avenue can shop and eat and promote the economy of the East Side. So not only is it a transit site for us, it's an opportunity to boost the economy of the East Side. It's going to be going through Phelan Avenue. It's going to go through and stop by Payne Avenue, and people can actually stop and eat and walk to those different shops. Thank you.
Terry Tao?
So I actually sit on the Rush Lines Policy Advisory Committee. I'm the only East Side resident that sits on that committee. And so I am fully in support of the line. I do not support a 35 alignment. We would be subsidizing suburban folks to come in and bypass us in the city altogether. This is also what people thought when we should do the light rail just along 94. We said no because we knew that the folks along University Avenue, on Rice Street, Frogtown, and Midway needed it to get between areas. And it's the same thing here. It will actually have 6 stops here coming up on the Phelan Boulevard and coming through the neighborhood. And I believe it can exist concurrently with the Bruce Vento Trail. I believe we can make, deal with the issues around the environmental preservation that needs to be done too. And when I talk to neighbors around there too, they're really interested in how that's going to work as well. And because it is about the economic development, the studies that they've looked at says a lot of the growth around the stops is equivalent to light rail growth. And so what we saw on the Green Line was that the $1 billion worth of the Green Line development led to $1 billion worth of investment. Thank you.
The next question will go first to Nelsie Yang, then Terry Tao, then Alexander Bourne. And here it is. There's reason to believe single-family zoning contributes to the housing crunch. What is an acceptable level of density to replace it with?
Well, I just want to share that for me, like I support higher density here in our community. We're going to be a very a growing community where I really imagine like a lot of young folks, wanting to move into the east side here, want to build, a family here, and a lot of businesses wanting to come here as well. I want to talk specifically about, development on the Hillcrest Golf Course. Like I really want to see mixed-use housing there, along with like businesses there as well, and for us to have affordable housing across income and family size. I've talked to neighbors around the area there who, are always very curious about what we as candidates want. And I've been asking them, what is it that you would like instead? And I've really gotten to a point where, this response here is like a crafted response from neighbors there who care deeply about making sure that they're able to live in peace and harmony there, but, are welcoming to families as well.
Terry Tao.
Thank you. I would be supportive of zoning similar to what we did, the city of Minneapolis just did in their 2040 comprehensive plan, which allows, if folks want to move, it's not saying they have to, but if they want to, up to a 4-plex on their property. Now, of course, with 40-foot lots that are the average size in the city, it will vary about what that must look like. But the fact of the matter is we do need density. We do add more and more folks to the city here. Density, for me, also translates into, what I would like to see happen is translates into home ownership, because when you have a duplex, you have someone helping you subsidize the mortgage, but in addition to that, you're providing housing to 1, 2, possibly 3 families. I also am supportive of accessory dwelling units or small homes on people's properties as well. That becomes a little cheaper way than trying to build a brand new house if you like the house you're living in now. But that is not citywide yet. I would certainly encourage that. I spent 9 years on the Planning Commission where we looked at a lot of these deep issues around zoning. And I think now is a good time for us as the city of St. Paul, for our growth, to look at increasing density.
Alexander Bourne.
I think increased density is a great thing, especially given that we have an ever-growing population of immigrants here on the east side, and that's the city as a whole. I think that, it's great. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. But also, I will use the rest of my time to talk about the fact how I do believe that we need to establish better zoning methods that encourage the development of the various levels of affordable housing that the market is demanding, such as artist lofts, things along those lines. Thank you.
Okay, the next 3 are Greg Copeland, Danielle Swift, and Kasim Basuri. Greg Copeland?
Yeah, I do not support the Minneapolis plan coming to St. Paul. They're going to adopt that on Friday over there to Minneapolis City Council. St. Paul ought to protect St. Paul's history and ought to protect the homeowners' investments by not going willy-nilly and making a unilateral decision over the entire city that anywhere there's single-family housing, now we can have 4-story buildings on 40-foot lots. How insane is that, folks? I mean, the reality is what we ought to do in Ward 6 is we ought to protect the investment that's already out there that the city has let lie fallow, and that's all these vacant homes. We've got hundreds of vacant homes. We've got hundreds of vacant lots. We've got all kinds of property that the city is promising to develop for future housing. Anybody want to buy a golf course? The city did, and they don't know what the heck they're even going to do with it. You know, we've got plenty of land to redevelop for senior housing, and I'm a senior, and you know what? As a guy who's in a big house all by himself, I'd be the first guy in line. But to go Minneapolis over here, forget about it.
Danielle Swift?
Yes, I would support looking at zoning to change it so that we could have more density. I sit on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and so anytime that someone requests a variance, they come in, and a lot of times it has to do with building something that's gonna be bigger than what's allowed on a 5,000 square foot lot. But there have been some very creative designs that have come in that are aesthetically pleasing, and they still fit a lot of the other codes that we're asking, maybe just a little bit bigger. I think that it would be very cool to see like fourplexes and duplexes. That way we could get creative with like cooperative living, and it would really add to the level of affordability. And I think the way that our city is growing, we don't really have an option to choose whether to increase the density or not at this point. But I think that there is a way that we can do it smart and something that will still look really cool.
Kasim Usuri?
I would support higher density zoning. For me, it's the American dream, right? So I came here as a refugee. I wanted to have my own home, and the way things are happening now with the price of constructions of homes that are in the 400, 500,000 ranges, you're better off building bigger and building duplexes and fourplexes to accommodate for the differences in pricing of the home. So I would support it, but I would also want to preserve our historical sites and houses that exist within St. Paul. So there's a lot of beautiful homes that were built here, and they're historical. We should preserve those areas and make sure that we do have guidelines to preserving some of those homes as well. Thank you.
All right, the next question will be asked starting with Alexander Bourne and just going straight down the line. So it is, what is your plan for improving the relationship between law enforcement and communities of color while ensuring that law enforcement remains empowered to protect our community? Alexander Bourne?
Read it one more time. Sorry to be that guy.
What is your plan for improving the relationship between law enforcement and communities of color while ensuring that law enforcement remains empowered to protect our community?
I think we can start by making sure that we understand that law enforcement is a part of our community. There is no in-between. However, I do believe that the police department right now does not adequately reflect who we are as a community, and I am more than willing to continue to help bridge that relationship. I think my partnership with the sheriff's office a few weeks ago, I think was a great start in the right direction. I am a trusted community member, particularly in the community that we are looking to address when it comes to gun violence and different forms of crimes that are taking place in the city, just having grown up right here on the east side in a highly impoverished community. Thank you.
Kasim Basuri?
So earlier today, there was a great event that was happening here at Arlington Rec Center. The police officers were giving out candy to community members right outside. This is part of the community engagement initiatives that the city has and the St. Paul Police Department has. The best way to rebuild trust with the community and the police department is to have more engagements with the police department. For the last nine years, I've worked with the St. Paul Police Department in community engagement with the East African community and with the St. Paul community through the ambassadors program that I was working with the youth and crime prevention activities. So the best way is to have more activities where our officers are engaging with our community, just like the one that happened earlier today, with them handing out candy and communicating and engaging with our community, so that way they reflect. And another thing is the police academy that's coming up for this coming year. We cannot cut the police department's budget because the coming up academy is one of the most diverse police academy that we'll ever see in the history of St. Paul, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not supporting a budget cut for the St. Paul Police Department. Thank you.
Greg Copeland?
Right. Well, I think we're going up the wrong street with some of this discussion about, what are we going to do for communities of color? we had a commentary here by many of the folks sitting at the table about how beautiful our community is because of its diversity. I think we need to respect that and treat ourselves to the good old American, we're all equal before the law and no man or woman is above the law. And frankly, I think the engagement that people who have children want, whatever their color, is to have bad guys get picked up and taken down to the jailhouse and get scheduled for a court appearance. Candidly, you know, letting people off and going, turning your back. I noticed the Minneapolis plan was released, and certain crimes, oh no, we're not going to pursue the bad actors in the community, at the Minneapolis Police Department. Again, another Minneapolis idea we don't need to bring over here. I went to the Arlington Hills Lutheran Church meeting at the NAACP had, and nobody there was taking a position that we ought to do for one that we don't do for the other.
Danielle Swift?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. What is your plan for improving the relationship between law enforcement and communities of color while ensuring that law enforcement remains empowered to protect our community?
Okay. Well, one thing I would like to start by saying is that police having power over our community is a part of a narrative problem that we have. Power lies within community. In any other instance, we expect community to show up and carry themselves, to push their own weight and to do their own work. But in this instance of safety, it's seen that police have to have power over communities of color. That's an initial problem, and it's highly problematic that it's even in the narrative. So part of the plan for me is to come and to shed the light on things like that, to be able to bring a more robust thought process to solutions that we can implement to see safer communities.
Terry Tao?
Yeah, I do think it implies, like, because when we have to deal with communities of color, the police can't do their jobs. I think most communities still want the police to do their jobs. I think what they're also saying too is, please just don't attack us because of the color of our skin as well. And we know right now there are huge instances of disproportionality between communities of color and the police about who gets arrested more, as well as incidences with law enforcement and communities of color. And so a plan and a way to do this is to build relationships, not necessarily have the police hand out candy, but have the police go to places where communities gather and do listening and building relationships and trust. We need to have folks out in this, on the streets, as well as on bike, and doing that type of patrol where they're more familiar in the neighborhoods, and not just, in their substations or just in the cars often at times too. And so I think they can still do their jobs. Most people still want them to do their jobs. If my house gets broken into, I still want them to show up. I just don't want to be treated differently as a result of that.
Nelsie Yang?
I also, Danielle, thank you so much for uplifting about the narrative being, very, very ironic how it's been named like that. I also want to just really touch on that as well because, people, I want to name that like folks of color, right? And I'm going to talk about my experience as somebody who does racial equity organizing. We're not here, right, like looking for, okay, let's like better our relationship by, meeting together. Actually, like what we actually need is like systemic change in our police department, in our criminal justice reform, in our criminal justice system as well. And like that really looks like us making sure we are investing our public dollars into mental health co-responders. Like, if we had a relationship that was working between the police and people of color especially, like that means that we should not have people of color, who are dying, out in the streets. We shouldn't have people who have a mental health condition out in the streets, like losing their life, and families being torn apart and living in trauma. So mental health co-responders is something that I'm actually like working on personally with leaders, all over. And I also want to talk about, making sure we have council members who are deeply asking questions about racial profiling and getting statistics about this.
Okay, now for the next question, we're going to go down the row again, the opposite direction. And this is the question: what is your stance on our trash system and the upcoming referendum? Nelsie Yang?
Thank you. I'm voting yes on the referendum, and I will be organizing people to also vote yes as well. I just want to say personally that it's pretty bizarre to see the trash issue be one of the top issues. And I want to name that if I were a council member when this contract was being crafted, it would have looked definitely like very different. Because as a union steward, I'm somebody who's always fighting to make sure that the voices of people are being centered in all the decision making in our contracts. I would have pushed for shared opt-out options. And I really believe that families who are getting city services, that they should actually be saving money and that we should be fighting for the best deal. And I acknowledge that didn't happen. But that's why I'm having conversations with neighbors and asking them right now from the get-go, what is it that you'd like to see? Because renegotiations will come up, and I want to make sure that you have a voice at the table and that you're not left out. And that's a commitment that I am bringing with me to the table as a council member, and also a commitment that you will see from me every single time we are here having a discussion about how to vote as a community.
Terry Tao.
Yes, I too will be voting yes on the referendum. I was always a yes vote, never wavered from it, because I know that there were deep inequities with the trash system in the first place. Some people in a lot of communities where they didn't speak English, they never knew they could negotiate their trash bill. They actually thought it was like their utility bill, and they had to pay it every month to the provider. And so I see it as a deep issue around equity, as well as having a greater environmental impact by having less trucks on the street, and from a public safety perspective. I know the process in terms of getting the contract there was extremely flawed. I know we didn't have much participation here on the east side. I think if we had actually done a pilot here, we would have figured it out for the rest of the city. A lot of times policy work's not very exciting, but when you have people at the table who can bring up these issues and talk about the impact on poor communities, seniors, communities of color, we can make the policy right in the first place. So yes, it's not a perfect contract, but I also wanted folks to realize what the implication of no means and on what it's doing to shift the burden from individual folks to property taxes as well.
Danielle Swift.
This is a tough one because it seems to be high on the profile list, and I just always felt like, man, it'd be great if we could organize around something that was affecting people like their lives, So I had to reach out and talk to a lot of people to really understand this. And this is just me being somebody who doesn't understand what a referendum is or how this charter works. And so I had to educate myself on that. And a lot of people I still don't even know how that's happening. From what I've learned, a no vote would mean that the 17% spread across the city, it would cost less for people who had lower market valued homes to pay for their trash. And as far as equity is concerned, it makes sense to me to vote no. That way, if we're doing a percentage, that spells equity to me. If it costs less money because you have less money or you live in an area of lower income, it makes sense to pay less for your trash. I think it would add to the affordability factor that we all like talking so much about.
Greg Copeland.
Yeah, I will tell you, I was an original signer of the petition to put this on the ballot. I sat for 12 years on our charter commission, and believe me, it's written in plain English, and it's embarrassing that as a city, as the capital city, that we have to go to the Supreme Court and ask our justices, who normally don't even meet in August, to read the charter to tell us that we can make an initiative on our ballot. How ridiculous is that? Frankly, this just shows you how much we need an entire new city council. This is much bigger than the trash issue. Using the trash issue to intimidate voters, to tell us that we have to pay $27 million more because they made a mistake and gave the store away when they gave the contract to the haulers? Under what system does the contractor get to do the billing, when it's supposed to be a city system? And the city council becomes what? Only an agent for collections. This is insane, and we got to stop. Vote no on election day, please. We need your no vote.
Kasim Basuri.
I've been consistent, and I am a no vote for the trash ordinance. The reason behind it is, and I want to thank Danielle for hitting on the spot about the equity. When it is put on the tax rolls, it is going to be more equitable for the east side. But not the point. The reason why I'm voting no is because to protect the charter of the city, to protect the rights of the citizen, 6,400 people petitioned for this to be on the ballot in 2018. We would not be in the situation we are in today if the council at that time listened to the people who they serve, the people are our executive directors, and we need to listen to them. By threatening the people of St. Paul and saying this is going to go on the tax levy when there are other options, it's wrong, and that's why I'm voting no. Thank you.
Alexander Bourne.
I'm all for organized trash. However, I am supporting a no vote on November 5th. I was actually one of the organizers that sat on Selby Avenue last year before it blew up as big as it is now, getting people to collect those signatures. But the problem is the implementation process, you know, the lack of transparency, the lack of inclusion. Another example of government coming into our community telling us what's best for us, as if we're not rational and practical thinkers on our own. That is the problem. At this point, we need to be asking ourselves, which one of these candidates sitting up here is going to support, how are we going to support a subsidizing of the system in the intermediate of a new contract? I do believe a new contract is foreseeable. However, it is not going to be until the end of its 5-year term. And people need to understand that, morally speaking, this is a problem. I understand that we will pay a little bit more over time, but that's something that we are willing to do as a no voter, simply for the betterment of our community and to take the power back from the government and put it in our community. Thank you.
Okay, the next question will be asked first of Danielle Swift, then Nelsie Yang, then Kasim Basuri. And it is, do you support the mayor's budget proposal to move $70,000 from the newly formed police mental health unit toward the fire department? How could you support the funding of both the mental health unit and the fire department?
Yes, I support it. Part of the volunteer work that I do is looking into the statistics of who's getting pulled over by the St. Paul Police Department. And it's like a third more black men. And so I think that if we were just to be more intentional about like who's where, you know, we're not just sending police out to harass people on the street, we can be more particular about where they're going to actually work and do crime. Moving that over to the police department then, or to the fire department, someone wouldn't be showing up with a gun. Most of the cases that we see in police fatalities are mental health crises. And so, you know, the thought of someone getting a call of a mental health breakout, a mental health episode, someone who I love, I wouldn't want a police officer to be called. I would much rather to see EMTs and mental health professionals just show up.
Nelsie Yang?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. Do you support the mayor's budget proposal to move $70,000 from the newly formed police mental health unit toward the fire department? How could you support the funding of both the mental health unit and the fire department?
Thanks for the question. This is actually like one of the first time I've been asked this, and I'd love to hear more. And I actually just want to take a moment to really talk about, not about this, but about how important it is to actually be investing our public dollars into our families and children to make sure that families here in the East Side are getting our fair share. When we talk about investing money into the police department, firefighters department, I'm always wondering like how are these departments actually responding to families here in the East Side? I would love to actually dig into that, as a council member, really dig into that with our district councils as well, our leaders here who are here representing our community and fighting to make sure that we have representation. That's the bigger question on the table here for me, because I know how disenfranchised and marginalized our community here has been, and there's so much urgency around it, and we actually need a council member who's here pushing that and talking about that with the mayor and really creating partnership and making sure that they are really working on the issues that matter to us.
All right, Kasim Basuri.
I would want to make a correction to that question. I believe the mayor went back on that proposal and left the money to the police department, and the number was actually more than 70,000. And I would support putting funding to both the police department and the fire department to have mental health specialists that are with them at all time. I heard about a case where a firefighter went to a hospital because they got called by the clinic, and the person was trying to commit suicide by a law enforcement, and the the fire department did not have a mental health person with them and didn't know what to do. They were asking the doctor what they wanted them to do. So this is the situations that our fire department is put in. This is the situation our police officers are put in. With the help of Ramsey County, the police department will continue its mental health unit that's with them, and it's growing actually. So that department could use some more funding, but the funding that was in question was for something else, and that money was left with the St. Paul Police Department.
Next will be Alexander Bourne, Greg Copeland, and Terry Tao.
So here's the thing. People need to understand that the police are policing a mentally ill community, okay? And what that means is that our police department should reflect that. I believe that neither the police department or the fire department is fully equipped with the tools necessary to adequately provide great service to its citizens right now. Do I support this shift in funds? Certainly, simply because right now the appropriations that had been made wasn't doing its job. You know, I think many people in the police department kind of took it as a joke. You know, how are you going to pair a mental health professional with one of my partners, replace my partner with a mental health profession? And I think over time, we saw that reflective in the actions that took course. You know, if I may recall your attention to about a month ago, I believe in this particular instance, when the gentleman was running at the police officer with a knife, he had to have been mentally ill. No
Great.
one in their right mind is going to run at a police officer with a knife. Okay, and so, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And I think that our policies that we implement and embrace moving forward should reflect that. And that's via our budget.
Great.
People need to know that
Excuse me.
the budget is our moral document. Thank you.
Greg Copeland.
Yeah, this is an area that's begging for our attention. I think $70,000 sounds inadequate, if anything. And frankly, if we want to protect the health of our community at large, the health of our individual citizens that may need mental health treatment and get tied up in some police action because somebody calls 911 and the officer responds and there's not a crisis team to intervene, then we've got a big problem, and that's how people end up dead in the street. And you know what? That's not in anybody's interest, and none of us in this room want that to happen. So this is an area where we need some systemic reform. We need to get all the stakeholders at the table, as they say, on this one. Because we've been getting this one wrong as a community for a long time, for too long. And you know, when you open up a homeless shelter, and on the first day it's full, as we're told with the second phase of the Catholic Charities home, we've got a big problem. And we've got to deal with it. And $70,000 is nothing. I mean, we got to really look at this.
Terry Tao.
Yeah, I would really, because I don't have the details, I would really ask what the shift, or what was the reason for the shift from the money from the police department to the fire department. I know it's really hard when we have limited public resources that we do have to make hard choices between each, but for me, as someone who looks at a lot of data and is about accountability, what was that money originally for, right? We do know there is increased calls for mental health, absolutely, but we also know that the fire, as well as the fire department, is increasingly being called for medical services, and so those are really hard trade-offs to make. And for me, I would have to look at what the request was for. In addition to that, what's the impact and the outcome of those? What are those going to be? Was it maybe a fire department in an area that's been seeing an increase in calls, for example? As someone who's been doing a lot of work at the government level, I think what I really want to push to is looking at accountability about what we are actually getting from our outcomes. What are we actually investing in, and what is being returned back to us? Thank you.
All right, it is now time for closings. Each candidate gets 2 minutes for their closing. And we will start, the first 3 candidates to make closings will be first Kasim Busuri, then Alexander Bourne, and then Danielle Swift. Kasim Busuri.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, this evening, especially on a workday evening, to listen to us, and so we can listen to you as well. I will continue to work for the East Side and for the citizens of St. Paul to make sure that the rights are not taken away from the people and to give the rights back to the people that it belongs to, that there is balance of power. When the charter change was going to happen, I was one of those people that said, no, this would put too much power in the city council's hand, and we should keep the power to the people itself, that to make sure that we are held accountable as well. I support making sure that we have more resources for our law enforcement community, that we have more funding for fixing our roads, and then also making sure that we have funding for developments for the East Side, especially for Payne Arcade and also Whitebear Avenue, that we redevelop those areas to make sure that businesses that are thriving, that will do good in our neighborhoods, move to the East Side. I want to see an East Side where our business corridors are thriving, they're growing, they're hiring our young folks who are on the streets that need the jobs, and that we are investing back into the community that needs it the most. We are in a highly concentrated area that's concentrated of poverty. We can only get out of that if we work together and we make sure that we develop these corridors back to their original health of prosperity. And if those businesses are successful, we'll be successful as well. And investing more money into our parks and continuing to work with our community members. Again, thank you. I hope to get your first choice in November 5th. And thank you again for allowing me to be with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexander Bourne?
Thank you. The fact of the matter is, this is a historical race, okay? This is the first time in 23 years where we are going to have an opportunity to elect an individual that has the ability to implement and embrace policies that adequately reflects who we are as a community, and quite frankly, abolish those that do not. I want to be that guy. I'm the only candidate that understands the East Side in its entirety. I grew up here. I've faced these challenges. I've lived in these same conditions that our city and candidates say that they are dedicated to changing. I think lived experience is something that has always been missing from the city council chambers, and I want to bring that. The fact of the matter is, we've lost 16 parks and recreation centers in the last 10 years, okay? I want to bring those back, many in which were impoverished communities, okay? So, some in which were right here on the East Side. We are divesting in our youth, and I believe that we need to do the exact opposite. We need to begin to invest our dollars in our youth. We need to make sure our seniors are able to age in place. We need to make sure our immigrants are able to thrive, not only in their business. We need to promote gender equality, racial justice, right, while protecting our prized water spaces, green spaces. We need to, Mr. Copeland alluded to the 150 some odd properties that the city currently have access to. We can solve a lot of our problems right now. We just need an individual to go in there and reprioritize what is best for the city of St. Paul. More importantly, for the East Side. I want to be that guy. Allow me. Vote for me November 5th, first choice. But if not, give me that second or third choice. I promise you, it won't be a waste. All right? Come on now.
Thank you. Danielle Swift?
Oh, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you for the hard questions. I've noticed, like, earlier on with candidate forums, a lot of them are kind of like, oh, what are you going to do? We all kind of are saying the same thing. And so it feels good to get to the meat of this, because they are very serious issues, and it does affect people's everyday life and quality of lives. And that's exactly why I'm running. I want to enhance the quality of life living on the East Side for everybody who lives here, from like the very smallest person to the very biggest person, to the homeless people, to the people who are living in big houses as well. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to show up in my authenticity. It's something that I've committed to myself jumping into this race. I think that it's important to bring transparency to City Council. We have elected officials who come in with this front, who may say one thing and then do another, and that's part of the reason why I'm challenging it. That's part of the reason why I'm in the race. And so even though it's been a challenge for me, I try to show up as my true self. I be honest, say things how I feel, and I just want to extend a thanks and appreciation for allowing me to show up as my full self.
Thank you. The next three will be Terry Tao, Nelsie Yang, and Greg Copeland. Terry Tao?
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming out tonight. I appreciate you taking your time to come listen to us. I have great love for the city. The city's been really good for my family, and I really want to see the East Side do well. I'm not going to be someone who says, wait, give me a chance. I've been doing the work in community for 15 years, right? And so investing in organizations, sitting on the board, rolling up my sleeves and doing the hard work of addressing the hard issues. And I think right now we cannot afford to have anyone who doesn't just, come in ready with the experience. We cannot wait. We are at the cusp of some really interesting and great opportunities here on the East Side, and we need to have folks who are going to be ready from day one to get this work started. I've spent my career behind the scenes doing this work, and I'm really excited now to come to the forefront and be a really great advocate and champion for the neighborhood. I will be honest and real about the struggles that we have in terms of the budget balancing that we have to do, but I also believe that it's about instilling hope and opportunity for the generations to come. Most people just want a dignified work, a good place to live, and a good place to call home, and an affordable place to call home to raise their families. And I know the East Side has always been a neighborhood like that does this, and I want to continue it for my children and the next generations to come. Thank you.
Nelsie Yang.
Thanks everybody so much for being here. When I think about the election this year for all of our neighbors, I often think about accountability and who we want our council member to feel accountable to. And I wanted to share that for me, it's always been working families. It's always been our unions. It's always been making sure that people are able to live and do well. It's why I worked on the $15 minimum wage. I really believe that everyone deserves to be able to make a livable wage so they can care for themselves and their family. When we allow people to do that and support them in doing that, we make sure that they, that's how they can also show up in their fullest self in the community, give back as well, and raise a family, or be a part of the community in a way that they're really proud of. And I wanted to share that for me, accountability has always been to people as well. And I named this because when it comes to us being at a negotiation table, we know that there's a pie and that the pie is going to be chipped, and we want the person representing us to actually be here fighting for our entire community, fighting to make sure that everyone's voices is at the table. And that's what I do in my everyday work as a union steward, as an organizer, and actually, even talking to people who are not politically involved, people who have been marginalized for a very long time. And that's what I plan to do as a council member. I'm so determined to do that. It's also the reason why our unions, our St. Paul teachers, AFSCME, SCIU, so many state unions have come together to support me as a council member. And we've actually been working as a collective for over a year now to fight and make sure that the East Side gets its fair share. And that people power is something that something that's so needed in a community like the East Side here. I'm super determined, to also bring all of you, along with our organizations, neighborhood councils, so many more to the table, and actually make sure that we are key decision makers in the future of the East Side here. And sure hope that I can count on your support this year as your first choice for City Council, and I'd love to talk some more. Thanks, everybody.
Greg Copeland.
Yeah, I would ask for your vote. I think that's the first thing we got to do is get you to support us and get on board over at the City Council to make some serious changes. And I'm going to give you 3 examples of why I think I can do a better job. Because I'm not going to promise you everything. You can't. There's just not the money, folks. Do you want your streets fixed, or do you want almost $16 million spent on new bike paths? That's a real choice. And in the current budget that's before the City Council, they said, yeah, spend $15.73 million on bike paths. I say, you know what? We've got a crisis on our streets. It's time to double up and spend the money where the crisis is. And, if you do things right, we'll take care of that. I sat on the CIB for 6 years under Norm Coleman. We replaced the Arcade Bridge, the Earl Street Bridge. We did a few things. So this experience thing, I wanted you to know that there's more than 1 or 2 people up here with some experience. And, you have to set priorities. Because you can't spend the same dollar twice, believe it or not. The other thing is the city collects millions of dollars from us in franchise fees. And yet and these are on our gas and electric bills, and yet we say we want to help the poor. Well, okay, I want to help poor people too. And I don't think we should be collecting franchise fees on the poorest citizens in the city. I think we ought to set up a system that exempts poor people who meet the same test that they have for the Federal Energy Assistance Program from paying those fees. And that's in the control of the city council, because it's the city council that has the franchise agreement with Excel. The other thing is we collect $18 a year from everybody that has a water meter, and we call it right-of-way maintenance. Well, we've got 28,000 lead service lines in St. Paul, and we need to replace those, and I want to spend that money on that. So those are 3 reasons I'd like to be your next city council member.
Thank you. That concludes the candidate forum tonight. I want to thank the candidates for giving well-considered answers to all of the questions, and thank you, the audience, for asking great questions and for being here tonight. Please vote on November 5th. Thank you.